The sound hit first, sharp, careless laughter cutting through the quiet of the corporate parking lot, echoing off glass walls and polished concrete. A cluster of executives stood near their luxury cars, suits crisp, confidence loud. In the center of it all was the CEO, smiling like the world belonged to him. His eyes landed on the old Mustang parked a few spaces away. Its paint faded, body worn, out of place among machines worth more than most people's homes. He didn't lower his voice. He didn't need to. "Whose junk is that?" he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Heads turned. A few nervous chuckles followed. Then he saw the janitor, keys in hand, uniform still marked with the quiet labor of the morning. The CEO laughed again, harder this time. "Figures," he said, that thing belongs in a scrapyard, not next to real cars." The moment stretched. Conversations died mid-sentence. People froze, unsure whether to look away or pretend this was normal. A few phones slipped out, screens glowing discreetly. Instinctively, this wasn't just an insult. It was a performance. Power enjoying itself. The janitor didn't react the way people expected. He didn't defend himself. He didn't apologize. He didn't flinch. He stood there calmly, eyes steady, posture relaxed, as if the noise around him barely existed. That silence unsettled more than any argument could have. Up close, the Mustang told a different story. The body was old, yes, but clean, nor neglected. The tires were new, the chrome polished by careful hands. This wasn't abandonment. This was intention, the kind that comes from pride, not wealth. The CEO kept going, feeding off the attention. "You know," he added, smirking, "some people should learn their place." A few laughs followed, thinner now, strained. The air felt heavier, charged, with something no one wanted to name. The janitor finally looked at the car, then back at the crowd unbothered. His fingers tightened once around the keys. Just once. Whatever sat beneath that hood wasn't meant to impress today, but it was. Wait, nay. Few employees shifted their weights, sensing the imbalance, the cruelty dressed up as confidence. This wasn't just about a car. It was about who was allowed to take up space, and who was expected to stay invisible. The laughter began to fade, replaced by an uneasy quiet that refused to disappear, and the man laughing the loudest had no idea what he was standing next to. Not yet. Not remotely. Reputations don't announce themselves. They settle into hallways, into lowered voices and careful pauses. Long before the laughter in the parking lot, everyone in the building knew exactly who the CEO was. He ruled through spectacle. Meetings weren't discussions. They were stages built for dominance. Mistakes were corrected publicly. Praise was rare and strategic. Fear, he believed, was the cleanest form of management, and respect would follow automatically if people were reminded who held the power. People learned quickly how to survive around him, speak when spoken to, laugh when he joked, agree before he finished his sentence, stay invisible if you were expendable. And the janitor was the most invisible of all. He moved through offices before dawn and after dusk, fixing what others ignored, cleaning up what others discarded. Most executives never learned his name. To them, he was part of the building itself, like the walls or the lights, useful but unnoticed. But invisibility has its own discipline. The janitor noticed everything. The shortcuts taken to inflate profits, the corners cut when no one was watching, the quiet cruelty that came with unchecked authority. He listened more than he spoke. Years earlier he had learned what happened when brilliance arrived without the right credentials or accent. Doors closed politely. Emails went unanswered. So he learned patience instead. And every evening, after his shift ended, he walked to the same Mustang with the same measured care. The car wasn't flashy, but it was precise. Custom bolts where factory parts should be. Reinforced components hidden beneath age. A faded racing decal barely visible unless you knew what to look for. This wasn't nostalgia. It was engineering disguised as memory, built by someone who loved systems more than applause. The CEO never saw those details. He saw symbols. Expansive meant valuable, old meant disposable, and people followed the same logic. So when he mocked the car, he wasn't just insulting metal. He was reminding everyone of the order of things, reinforcing a hierarchy that kept him comfortably on top. He circled the Mustang slowly, hands in his pockets, voice carrying with practiced ease. "This is what happens," he said, "when you stop dreaming too soon." Laughter followed, thinner than before, forced by habit rather than humor. The janitor stood a few steps away, unmoving, letting the words pass through the air without defending himself. Employees nearby felt a shift immediately. Some stared at the ground. Others glanced at the janitor, then back at the CEO, as if silently asking how far this humiliation would go. Phones were no longer subtle. The moment had crossed into something dangerous. Humiliation was being staged, and everyone was being made complicit by their silence. Whispers began to ripple quietly at the edge. Someone recognized a component under the hood. Another noticed the tires weren't standard issue. Engineers exchanged looks that suggested curiosity replacing mockery. A few faces tightened with recognition. sensing that something here did not match the story being told. For the first time, doubt crept into the crowd, slow and contagious. The janitor's expression remained calm, almost distant, but his stillness carried weight. He wasn't shrinking. He wasn't apologizing. He was choosing restraint. That restraint became the moral center of the moment. In a culture built on noise and dominance, silence felt like defiance. It unsettled the CEO. Power hates being ignored. Power needs reaction, needs submission, needs visible proof that it is working. So he stepped closer, closing the distance, pointing toward the hood as if claiming it. "Go on," he said, smirking now, voice dripping with confidence. "Let's hear it, prove it runs." The parking lot fell completely silent. No laughter, no chatter. Just the sound of held breath, as everyone understood the line had been crossed and whatever happened next would not be small. He didn't rush. That was the first thing people noticed. While tension vibrated through the parking lot, the janitor moved with calm precision, as if time bent slightly in his favor. He stepped past the CEO without acknowledgement, the crowd parting instinctively. Every footstep felt deliberate, measured, almost ceremonial. The keys rested heavy in his palm, not jingling, not shaking. This wasn't defiance. It was certainty. The kind that comes from knowing exactly what you're about to reveal, and understanding the weight of the silence that comes before it. He reached the Mustang and ran a hand along the hood, not possessive, but familiar. Then he lifted it. "What?" I stared back at the crowd. Was not decay or neglect. It was engineering. Clean lines, reinforced mounts, a configuration that didn't belong to any catalog most of them knew. Conversations stumbled, then stopped. A few engineers leaned forward, without realizing they'd moved. This engine wasn't loud in its appearance. It was precise, purpose-built, whisper-quiet in design, but unmistakably serious in intent, like a predator conserving energy. The CEO laughed once, sharp and dismissive. "Cosplay," he said, waving a hand. "Anyone can dress up junk." The voice was louder than necessary, trying to reclaim control. But it didn't land the same way. The crowd's attention had shifted. Eyes lingered on the engine, on details that refused to be dismissed. This wasn't nostalgia bolted together for attention. This was something else, something modern, disciplined, expansive in the way only intelligence can be. The janitor closed the hood gently and walked to the driver's side. He didn't look at the CEO, he didn't look at the crowd. He sat, adjusted the seat slightly, and paused. That pause stretched longer than comfort allowed. Phones were no longer hidden now. Screens rose openly. Someone whispered a number. Someone else shook their head in disbelief. The parking lot felt smaller, like the air itself was leaning in. Then the key turned. The sound wasn't explosive, it was clean, controlled. A low, confident ignition that vibrated through the concrete and settled into a steady, disciplined hum. Not roaring for attention, not straining, just alive. Conversations cut off mid-word. The laughter evaporated instantly. This wasn't an old engine fighting for relevance. This was a lead, purposeful, tuned with restraint and power in equal measure. The kind of sound that doesn't beg to be heard because it knows it will be. The CEO's smile froze my decks. Engineers stared openly now, stepping closer, instincts overriding hierarchy. Someone muttered about torque curves. Another recognized the architecture, eyes widening. This wasn't a restoration. It was innovation wearing an old shell, a deliberate disguise. The janitor stepped out of the car, letting the engine idle, letting the truth speak before he did. He didn't boast. He explained only what was necessary. Modular design, thermal efficiency beyond current standards, scalable architecture, adaptable across platforms. He spoke calmly, like a teacher correcting a misunderstanding, not like a man defending himself. Words like prototype and licensing drifted into the air. Patents were mentioned, vaguely, carefully, enough to signal magnitude without giving away control. The crowd absorbed it in fragments. This wasn't supposed to be possible. Not from someone they had erased into the background. Not from someone whose badge opened supply closets instead of boardrooms. The engine continued its steady rhythm, unbothered by the disbelief surrounding it. Phones captured everything now. This was no longer a private humiliation. It was becoming a public reckoning in real time. The CEO tried to speak, but the confidence didn't return with the words. He nodded too quickly, smiled too late. His authority felt suddenly theatrical, like a costume worn too long. Engineers whispered openly now. Names of firms, valuation estimates, market disruptions. The Mustang wasn't the story anymore. It was the proof, the symbol of something they had failed to see because they'd never bothered to look down. The janitor shut the engine off, and the silence that followed was heavier than the sound had been. He stood there, unassuming, while recognition rippled outward. This wasn't luck. This wasn't a hobby. This was the result of years spent building quietly while being ignored loudly. The CEO finally understood that something irreversible had happened. and that control had slipped without a single raised voice. But the engine wasn't the moment that changed everything. It was a realization settling across the parking lot, the dawning truth behind the calm, the restraint, the patience. The most shocking part wasn't what had been built, it was who had built it. The shift was almost imperceptible at first, like a low vibration running under the parking lot's polished concrete. Whispers had begun among the crowd, curiosity climbing, into recognition, tipping toward disbelief. Then came the proof: emails, contracts, licensing agreements, all digital fingerprints tracing the engine's origin to a single source. A man who had spent years invisible, erased from recognition, quietly building the foundation of a $2 billion engine platform while the world dismissed him as a janitor. Names once ignored, rejections filed and forgotten, now resurfaced as evidence of a system that had underestimated him. The employees absorbed it in waves. Phones clicked, cameras recorded, fingers scrolled, sending fragments of the moment into the outside world. The CEO's laughter, once so commanding, felt fragile now, replaying in the mind of everyone present. He tried to smile, to reclaim the air he had monopolized minutes before, but the weight of truth bore down unevenly, unshakable. Confidence that once radiated from him like heat now flickered, fractured up. I didn't know, he stammered, voice catching. Attempting to regain footing, he leaned into charm, into the practiced posture of authority. Perhaps this is coincidence, amazing coincidence. Or maybe we could collaborate. Yes, collaboration. But the words fell flat. The crowd's perception had shifted irrevocably. They no longer heard a powerful CEO. They saw a man scrambling. It supposed a bully confronted by his own ignorance and the brilliance he tried to dismiss. The janitor remained unmoved, poised, every movement measured, every glance calm. His silence spoke volumes. No theatrics, no posturing, just undeniable presence. Social media became instantaneous. Clips streamed live. Screens inside offices and on nearby phones replayed the CEO mocking the Mustang, mocking the janitor. The context, once invisible, was now crystal clear. The world outside the parking lot could see exactly what had happened, exactly how the overlooked had been belittled, and exactly who was truly responsible for the engineering marvel before them. Comments exploded in real time. Outrage, AW, validation. This is why humility matters, read one post. Never underestimate anyone, read another. Within minutes, the humiliation had extended far beyond the lot, beyond the building, into a digital echo chamber that would not be silenced. The CEO's gestures became increasingly desperate. Hands flew, eyes widened, words stumbled. He attempted justification, then deflection, then partnership again. Each attempt dismantled silently, effortlessly, by the calm dignity of the man standing before him. Every spin collapsed under its own weight, because the truth didn't need embellishment. It was self-evident. The engine had already spoken, and the man who built it had already claimed his authority without raising his voice. Authority doesn't ask for acknowledgement. It demands recognition, and recognition had arrived, uninvited, undeniable. Employees, once complicit in silent observance, now openly acknowledged the janitor. Heads turned, murmurs rose, steps approached to offer quiet nods or stifled applause. The dynamics had flipped completely. For years, hierarchy had dictated that brilliance be recognized only when polished by pedigree, elevated by title, endorsed by the powerful. But here, in this moment, brilliance refused to wait. It claimed its stage, exposing the weakness of power built on arrogance rather than merit. The CEO glanced around, seeking rescue, support, some signal that he still controlled the room. None came. The cameras, the phones, the eyes, all of them now bore witness to a truth he could not erase. His mockery of minutes ago looped endlessly on screens, juxtaposed against the calm dignity of the janitor whose intellect had been invisible to him for far too long. The audience, both present and virtual, began to erupt with murmurs of approval, admiration, and incredulity. The narrative had shifted. He was no longer the protagonist in this story. The janitor had become its undeniable hero. Sweat appeared along the CEO's brow, though he tried to wipe it away as if erasing reality itself. The more he attempted to justify, to reclaim control, the clearer it became that his authority was a facade. His dominance, built on mockery and fear, had crumbled in seconds. The janitor, once relegated to the background, now commanded attention with every measured breath. He had become unignorable, not through aggression, but through the quiet, undeniable power of skill, intellect, and perseverance. Every camera pointed at him reinforced it. Every smartphone clip ensured it. Every whispered acknowledgement in the lot cemented it. And yet, even as the CEO grasped at the collapsing threads of his reputation, the scene was far from complete. He imagined that exposure, humiliation, and failure had reached their peak. The moment had nowhere left to go but quiet resignation. But he was wrong. The air changed again. heavy, anticipatory. A subtle movement of the lot's perimeter went unnoticed by most, but the janitor's eyes caught it. The crowd sensed it, and in that instant, before anyone could intervene, the next wave of reckoning arrived. The board, authority figures he thought he controlled, executives whose silence had enabled arrogance, they stepped into the lot, the very embodiment of judgment, and the CEO realized that his nightmare had only just begun. The air in the parking lot had shifted permanently. Where arrogance had once strutted, accountability now took its place. The CEO stood frozen, surrounded by cameras and smartphones that recorded every twitched, every faltering word. His attempts at explanation had dissolved into embarrassment, replaced by the undeniable truth of brilliance he had ignored. Around him, employees whispered, nodding in quiet acknowledgement, understanding that respect could no longer be feigned. It had to be earned. The janitor remained calm, composed, almost imperceptibly smiling at the realization of the moment's weight. He did not raise his voice. He did not bask in applause. He did not gloat. His victory was not in humiliation, but in recognition of what had long been invisible. Years of skill, intellect, and dedication that had quietly built something extraordinary. He turned slightly, gesturing toward the Mustang, letting it speak. In place of any self-congratulation, the car, once dismissed as junk, idled smoothly. The engine's hum now, a symbol of perseverance and ingenuity. Phones and cameras captured every detail. Online, the clip went viral within minutes. Comments exploded across platforms. Praise for humility, outrage at arrogance, and validation for the underestimated. The story became a rallying cry, a reminder that brilliance can reside anywhere. Unannounced, waiting for the right moment to be seen. The Mustang, the man, the engine, they had become icons of quiet power, symbols of the cost of underestimation and the importance of respect. As the crowd watched, the janitor climbed back into the Mustang. With a smooth motion, he shifted into gear, letting the engine speak one final time before pulling away. Tires rolled across asphalt that had once been dominated by laughter, leaving behind an echo of dignity far louder than any mocking voice. The CEO remained rooted, a lesson etched into his pride, while the janitor vanished into motion, carrying with him a quiet yet indelible truth the world had watched. And the lesson was clear. True power does not shout. It does not demand attention through spectacle or intimidation. It is patient. It is steady. It is built, piece by piece, in silence. And when it finally makes itself known, the impact cannot be ignored. Just as the janitor proved, isn't always loud, but when it starts, the world listens. She thanks the staff again, acknowledging their restraint and courage. She reminds them that dignity is not fragile, that it grows stronger when protected collectively. Then she gathers her coat and turns toward the door. She does not linger. She does not wait for praise. The room offers it anyway, but she declines it with a glance and a gentle shake of her head. Outside, the night absorbs her quietly. Inside, the aftermath ignites. Clips surge across platforms, millions watching composure defeat cruelty without shouting. Comment sections fill with recognition and relief. People name their own stories, the rooms where silence swallowed them, the moments they wish had ended like this. Conversations spark about racism taught casually, class enforced loudly, power corrected only when seen. Boardrooms convene, emergency calls, schools issue statements, foundations scramble to respond. The family's circle tightens, then thin. Consequences ripple outward, not a spectacle, but a structure, rearranging incentives that once rewarded harm. Across screens and kitchens and late-night buses, people watch and recognize themselves. Immigrants who learn to keep accents soft feel seen. Workers who swallow jokes to keep jobs feel relief. Parents talk with children about what respect looks like when no one is forcing it. Teachers assign the clip, faith leaders share it. Organizers argue about policy, then agree on principle. The moment becomes language, a reference point, a way to say enough without shouting. It reframes leadership as listening and courage as calm. It reminds institutions that culture is taught in moments like these, and corrected there too. The story does not promise perfection. It promises direction. It says harm can be named without cruelty, consequences set without chaos, and change begun without humiliation. It challenges viewers to practice power differently tomorrow, in offices, classrooms, stores, and homes. To interrupt laughter that wounds, to refuse silence that endorses, to protect dignity before it is tested. The ripple keeps moving, carried by ordinary people who decide this ending should not be rare. Because when stories teach, habits change, and when habits change, futures bend toward justice that feels possible and shared. It invites accountability without spectacle, empathy without erasure, and hope without denial. Insisting progress is built deliberately by many small, brave choices. Each viewer is asked to choose courage in ordinary moments, to stand up quietly, and to teach dignity by example. That choice, repeated, reshapes rooms long before cameras arrive and applause fades. It is slower, harder work, but it lasts. And it belongs to everyone willing to learn. Tonight proves that possibility. Tomorrow depends on us. Everywhere, every day. Starting now. Together, without excuses, we move forward. The narrator closes with reflection, steady and clear. True power does not throw food. True wealth does not laugh at pain. And true dignity never has to beg for space. It stands, names the truth, and teaches the room how to change. They believed money made them untouchable. They learned instead that dignity walks in quietly, waits patiently, and reminds everyone who truly owns power.